braid. You get a braid, and you get a braid. If it was only that easy. When I happen upon a true cinephile, I find it necessary to brush off my dusty and wandering brain so that I may have a productive conversation with that cinephile. When John Massari told me I need to follow Ivotres Littles, I got right to it and was, of course, blown away. Ivotres is a true horror cinephile with not just a passion for horror, but it's also part of her genetic makeup. When an entire genre is the outlet for a young girl's escape from the real world, that's more than just an interest or a hobby. I've come to get ridiculously excited anytime Ivotres releases a new photo or YouTube video. Just love her. I'm beyond thrilled to introduce you to, though you probably already know who she is, the Oprah of horror, horror movies and beyond creator, Ivotres Littles.
And I am here at Monsterpalooza with Dragpool.
Yes, she is.
Yes, and Weasel.
Hey.
And as you can see, oh my gosh, Dragpool, you are fabulous. We often, with our friends, play around with Ouija boards and other strange things. But none of us never thought during this pandemic that we can summon something through the internet. So let me tell you about a story about 6 unsuspecting friends that decided to try that very thing. It's only the internet. What harm could it do? So they thought. So they set out to try something different. And as a result, well, you just have to wait and find out. Let me tell you about a movie called Host. Stick around if you dare. Hi, and welcome to Horror Movies and Beyond, and I am here in the lovely home with John Massari. And this is such an exciting experience because we actually go behind the scenes of many things that he's done. And I am so honored to be in your home. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you.
And I promise I won't be Instagramming during this. I'm going to turn my Instagram off. Anyways.
So...
Shut the fuck up. That was so awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to my ridiculous, weird little show, Ivotres. You don't realize what an honor this is because you're so humble. I admire you so much. So thank you.
No, thank you.
You're so awesome. So let's just jump right into it. The questions that I have for you are just ones that I've actually held on to since, I started, definitely, I'll just admit it, creeping on your Instagram profile and going through your YouTube channels and throwing my hands up and screaming, yes, girl, when you got the whole deal with the black horror with Nostalgic Nebula. So yeah, these are all things that I've been wondering and wanting to sink my claws into you. So there's a distinction I like to make with horror fans. There are fans that love the genre like I do, and then there are fans that are the genre. You're a cinephile that was raised watching horror films. So tell me, what was the first horror film that you remember watching and realizing that this is it for you?
Whew. Gosh, it's hard to pick which one actually did it because I grew up watching them since, oh my God, the first horror film was The Thing. So just it's been like a constant. It was a family function. So to actually pick a time where horror films okay, this is it. This is what I want. The focus is there. Oh my God, it's so hard.
I know. I hate when people ask me this question, but then I do it.
I have to go with Aliens because, I was older to understand when I saw that movie. I actually saw that in a drive-in when those were abundance. But that's another story and another age. but yeah, I have to say Aliens. because it was just so fascinating. It was big and epic, and I just love it. So it was Aliens that really kept it going after that. Like, oh, I got to keep watching. I got to keep watching. So
I love that. Alien was so good. R.I.P. Ian Holm too, Sir Ian Holm. I couldn't believe he was one of those ones like Christopher Lee. I thought, are you immortal? Like, so. But anyways, great film. I love revisiting Alien, the whole series, even Prometheus, over and over again, at least once a year. So I'm with you on that. So you're an incredibly brave woman. You brought me to tears more than once. You actually suffered through some real life horrors, a lot of real life horrors that found you, or you've actually suffered through a lot of real life horrors and found your safe place in your imagination, which, you know, is a special place in all of our spirits. And again, it's understandable. So you found, okay, let me just rephrase that. You suffered real life horrors and found your safe place in your imagination and in horror films. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your story?
When I started to find that as a safe haven, or how it became, like, right before, like, everything before I found my safe haven. So
whatever you're comfortable with.
I'm completely comfortable. It's just how much time do you
Oh, with you, girl, all the time.
Well,
so let's say, how did you come into it? Let's say, how did you, when you, like, the moments that you found safety and comfort watching those horror films, and then the things that you had to think about and why that happened. Like, like, what happened to you? Which is, it really sucks. And I'll get more into that, why it's so important to actually share, you know, your trauma, because it's how you overcame it. And I think it's absolutely beautiful, because you could have went, you know, a whole different route. So
it would be fair to explain what happened, you know, because we, like, if I just went into it, like, what happened, why, you know, you'll get that. So, well, my growing up in my family, it wasn't pleasant all the time. Before I was even thought of, the family that I was going to be born in was already going through some turbulent changes and things like that. But my dad really wanted a kid because his son died in a horrific car crash years before. So when he married my mom, he just really wanted another kid he wanted to share his love with. And my mom didn't want any children. She absolutely didn't want any kids. She was done. She had 3 girls before me, and that was it. But much convincing, she did. So here I go. It was fine with my dad. He was so awesome. He taught me so many things. He taught me how to draw and color in the lines. He knew I loved horses. He would buy me My Little Ponies. I don't know, the real they were like this big.
right.
And yeah, so that was my thing. My Little Ponies, anything horses. I love horses. So he would do that. And for my birthday one time, he surprised me at my school to get, they brought a horse, because next to I went to a private school, and next to it was stables. So at the end of the day, they had me stay, and the school was in on it. And when I came out, I was like, well, my parents left me. And I was in 2nd grade when this happened. And I came outside, and it was a guy with a horse, and my dad was standing next to him, and I got to ride the horse around the school. So there was no kids, you know, safety issue, and nobody wanted to be jealous. So that's how amazing my dad was. And don't get me wrong, family has their moments, you know, but he was never violent to me. I was his only daughter. I mean, he would cook me pancakes. Pancakes were, you know, my favorite food. I mean, he just did so much. Sorry.
Oh no, I wish I had my tissues. I'm gonna have to keep that down.
Like it just, like, when I was thinking about, anyway. Okay, so He was such an amazing dad. And the night before he passed away, it was he called his sister, and I found out, and I'll get to that, but I found out about his family. I haven't seen him in over 30 something years, and they found me on Facebook. So they told me my dad called them and said he was ready to come home because he was tired of the violence. And he was going to take me, and they were going to move back to Georgia. That's where he's from, Georgia. And they were very close family. He has 2 twin sisters and another sister and brother, and they wanted him back because they knew what was going on. They knew somewhat what was going on, and it was unhealthy, and they wanted him to leave, but they had to do it on his terms. So when he contacted them and said, "I'm ready to come home," that's when they all knew it was bad, because my dad was tough. And so when he told it to his sister, Terrence, "Oh, okay, come on, we're ready for you, welcome home, bring your little girl." And the next night, the next day, I think the following night or 2 nights, they didn't hear from him. And that's when they got a phone call, said he was dead. And they said they just screamed and hollered through the house because they just talked to him. And they never knew why. They never knew to this day how he died. But I was there. And they asked me, one of the sisters finally asked me what happened. And I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm not ashamed or scared about what happened or saddened, because it's part of my life. It's the memories I have. And you do hear someone say, "Oh, leave your past behind." Well, my past can't be behind, because who I am sitting right now is because of my past. So I have to hold on to it and understand what happened at the same time. So it's a juggling all the time. So what happened, my dad was telling me, no, my mom said she was going to bingo. Don't say anything. I was very close to my dad. Tell my dad everything. I told him my mom went to bingo. When he came home, he went looking for her. My mom came home first, and I was in the bed with my sister, and because we shared a bed and shared a room. And they both came home. They were in the room. We didn't hear anything. Then there was arguing and things, yelling and screaming. They came out the room, screamed and hollered at each other. And then there was some fighting. My sister got up. I stayed in the bed. My sister got up and went in there. And I could still hear her screaming and hollering. And then I finally got out of the bed. And I walked down the hallway, and I saw, my mom and him arguing at each other, kind of pushing and shoving, but I did not see my sister at all. And how it was, like when I stand at the end of the hallway, you could see everything. So except for the kitchen, which you have to go around the corner. And I didn't see my sister anywhere. So I was like, and the front door was closed and locked. And my dad turned around, he saw me, and he said, "You don't need to see this, get back to bed." So I turned around, went to the bed, and he was following me. And then he went into the bedroom. I went into my room, and he closed his bedroom door. And my mom and my sister were still in the living room. After a while, he decided to come out, and there was some yelling. And then I heard a big thump, like something hit the ground. And my sister was screaming. My mom was screaming. And I still didn't get right out of the bed, because it was just like, well, he told me to stay in the bed. And then I think probably like a minute or so, I climbed out of the bed and walked in. I saw my dad on the ground, on his back. My mom was knelt near his head. He was moving and he was mumbling, but he wasn't getting up. So I walked to the door, and my sister was screaming and crying and banging on the door at the neighbor. And I walked back over to my dad, and he was still mumbling. I couldn't understand what he was saying. My mom was just kneeled. No one called anybody. My mom is a registered nurse, and she didn't do anything. So no one did anything. And I was 6.5 years old. And I couldn't understand why he was laying on his back. And then he stopped moving. And I was close enough to my feet was touching his, body. And then still didn't understand why he stopped moving. And then it just became chaotic after that. The neighbors come out, the police come, the ambulance and everything, but no one paid attention to the little girl. So it was like I was standing there and everybody was walking past, screaming, and paramedics, but no one paid attention because how I was standing was off to the side. So I stood there and I wanted to see what was going on. So they turned him on his back, and his entire back was blood red and the floor. So he bled out right there. The front was clean, but his whole entire back. And that's when I knew something happened to him. And I was a very smart girl. And no one wanted to ask me what happened or do I remember or anything. You're 6 years old. She's not going to remember. She's not going to be traumatized. But that's not the worst that happened to me. After that, I was abused by my sister. Names are not important. I was abused. And I'm not going to go in great detail, but I'm just going to list the things that happened to me. I was, beaten. I was beaten so severely I was bleeding, and she put me in the tub. And the water was red. I was beaten with hangers, brooms, kicked, punched, sexually touched. I had sexually touched her. If I didn't, I was constantly punched and beaten. Then the question is, where's your mom? My mom worked all the time because she was on call. She was one of those psych register nurses. She was very highly educated. Her job was important because where we lived, we had everything. Cars, food, clothes. My sisters had everything. So my sister that was abusing me, she's 6.5 years older than me. Just to put an age bracket there. And then my other sisters were grown and gone. So I was left with her and I had to endure that. But I found sanctuary even at that young age when I watched movies. I would watch the He-Man and cartoons and stuff like that. But I started to watch a lot of sci-fi, weird science, Ghostbusters, some scary at that time. I can't remember what movies at the time. Oh, Lost Boys and stuff like that. But I didn't put two and two together because when I watched them, I would be somewhere else, and I would be happy watching those things. I would laugh and joke, but after it was, you cut the TV off, the abuse, and then I would go back in the abuse, and so that went on for a little bit, for a while, probably till I was maybe 10. And even then I was forced to live with her. I was forced to be around her. So she didn't really abuse me after 10 years old, but she would allow her friends. I mean, they would put curling irons on my face. It was a lot of things happened, but I always found sanctuary in movies. So it was a pretty tough, my first sexual experience is my sister. It's part of who I am. It sucks. It sucks because the memories are so vivid, and it was like I wish I could let those go away, but no, it went on for a long time.
And it's really interesting. Again, this is why, out of reason why I'm so drawn to you, because your strength is something that I can't even comprehend. So when I make connections with folks, it's usually like, oh, well, this is just an Instagram virtual person. No, you have this story. I didn't know your story until later on, but you had me in tears, just with a simple post. this right here, I guess how I can understand you is that there's even with within my own family, um, not naming names, where there was abuse. You know, there wasn't as, again, not to compare. I don't ever want to compare anyone's story with another, but there was the sexual abuse, and it's interesting how, you know, a certain pair of sisters were able to move on, become successful, and live with it the way that you have, because your past becomes who you are, and it's up to us to shape our paths. And then there's the one sister who lets it, you know, fuck with her life day in and day out. And you know, you see the dependency, and then you see the narcissism, and it's like you Ivotres, again, a fucking warrior. You're a goddess. This is your story, and you could have went down a path of self-destruction. You could have went a different way. You could have used the abuse and torture that you endured, seeing your father die, watching your father die. You could have went a different path, but instead you chose to strengthen yourself, strengthen your spirit. um let's talk about how you decided to put yourself out there, even because you were also bullied. You were abused constantly, physical abuse, sexual abuse. You were just in it. And then you become the Oprah of horror. You welcomed me in. um, you welcome me into your realm. You answer my questions. You give me advice. And I'm thinking, as a person who suffers from anxiety and depression, I do find myself seeking to help others when I'm in a bad place. It makes me, that's kind of my therapy. I could be crushed, feeling like shit, but then I'll reach out to someone and go, hey, how's your day? How are you feeling? Someone that I know also suffers from it too. And just to uplift someone else helps me get out of that funk. And you did that for me. Because I know that you clearly still have, you know, the depression issues, the suicidal thoughts, but you put yourself out there. And it's incredibly hard for a person to do that when we feel so alone in the world. So, what made you decide to get out, put yourself out there, and become who you are today?
Well, I I think it really started when, because like you said, I was bullied severely, not like pushed and shoved. I was like punched, kicked, slapped, chased, jumped, made to, guys would touch me all kind of ways and things like that. I didn't have anybody to run to. And believe it or not, when I was like 13, I started watching wrestling when it was WWF, and I saw, there were kids there and stuff like that, and I had a chance to go to see them live, and that is when, even though it's not necessarily horror, it was I could be somewhere else, and there's hope. There's always hope, and then there were other kids that were there, and we all cheered and laughed and became friends. And so even though my life was in shambles at that time, I always found sanctuary in something I loved. And even though it wasn't horror at the time, 13, 14, 15, 16, I was still, into wrestling. But I was still watching horror films. But I noticed like, okay, if I keep going in life, things will get better. Like I started thinking that way, even though things were horribly happening. And so I started into more horror films with my niece. My niece is 3.5 years younger than me. So we started watching a lot of horror films together. And she became my rock, because at the time, my dad would take me and my niece, and we would go have breakfast and things like that. I know she was a baby. So when I see her, that's that memory of happiness. And since The Thing was the first film that I watched, that's a thing of happiness. So there's things that keep me going. And how did it change me? That I didn't go down a dark path, because I always believed in hope. I always believed in hope. I'm not a religious person per se. I believe in everything, but I don't have a specific path. But I always believed I will come out of it. Even though I was being beaten, it will stop. I'm being bullied, it will stop. Something will stop and I have that moment of clarity. And don't get me wrong, I've tried to commit suicide. One time I was almost successful. And I was mad at myself because I was like, geez, I can't even do that right. You know, I was like, I couldn't even do that right. So this must not be the thing I should be doing. But I just kept going because I would also watch people who went through tragedy in their lives and they came out of, they have their stories. And I was like, okay, if I hang on, I will be able to help someone else because I can't help someone else if I'm still below.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And helping someone, for me, you know, people are like, how can you tell your story? That's tragedy. No, I lived my life. My job now is to help someone else and keep it going. Because I know how it feels to be bullied, be molested, be all these horrible things. I've been homeless. I've been, you know, and I still went to school full time. I went to Cal State Fullerton. I went to Long Beach City College and graduated. I can draw, I can paint, I could do all kinds of things, but no one knows because I was so hurt by my past, and I was so depressed and so much anxiety. I would hide and I wouldn't show anything of who I was because I was afraid that someone would see the past I hated. But I learned that I can't hate my past. It's not my fault. I was born in that family. But I could use it to help someone else. My story, it doesn't make me a different person. Talking to someone about it, it lets me know to tell this person, life sucks and it will be okay. I know just everything is crumbling on you, but believe me, it will be okay. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be glorious. It's not going to be anything. It's going to be okay for you enough to say, I beat it. Now it's my turn to help someone. So that's how I'm here.
Damn. And I love that. Because we were always taught, kids of the 80s, man, we are some shit. We are amazing. We are the ones that were told you can't talk about your past. You can't talk about this. You can't talk about that. You can't wear certain things because it'll attract this thing. You can't do this. We're not going to talk about it. I was told, and I'm still told, I've made up bullshit stories. No, I told my truth.
Mm-hmm.
And because you couldn't face that, that's my problem? No. So therefore, yeah, I'd rather be a more healthier person and help those. Because we grew up, we chose a different way, and we chose to help people. You especially, Oprah of horror. You're just, So let's lighten it up a little bit. What were your, again, I'm so intrigued I could do this for hours with you because I could just listen to you talk and share your story and I could feel the energy and power. But, you know, as rough as your childhood was, you said that it wasn't all awful. So what did your Halloweens look like?
Oh, man, we would get those plastic costumes.
Those Ben Coopers?
Where you sweat, them crazy looking masks. And Halloween, trick-or-treating in the 80s was lit.
Right? Right?
From the parties, the streets were packed. Oh my God, from the haunted little houses, people made their garages. It was packed. Parents would let their kids, you get a group of your friends, 15, 16-year-old, and just go.
Nope.
You didn't bring a little thing for candy. You brought pillowcases.
Right?
Sheets, whatever you can put together. And trick or treat. You can hear it, trick or treat, all down the block. And sometimes in some neighborhoods, the city would cut out the lights, the street lights. Where I was at, the street lights would come on just for a few blocks in certain areas. And, almost every house had their porch light on. People standing outside, smoke going. People would decorate. It was so epic.
Ugh.
Now, it's
Don't
not.
even get me started. I had to tell my kids a few years ago. I give them pillowcases. They're like, "Mom, let's get the cute little bag." I'm like, "Hell no! You get a pillowcase." I take it seriously. You get a pillowcase, and when you go out, I expect but they come back, these kids, with like not even a quarter of their pillowcase full. I'm like, "Get your asses back out there and trick or treat." They're like, "But we're tired." I'm like, "They have no idea." They also think The Exorcist is funny, so they have no clue how lit the '80s was. They wait and watch,
Yeah, that was
you know.
a memory I'm glad I got a chance to live, because it was, I mean, sometimes your pillowcase was so full, you bring it home, dump it or leave it, grab another one and go. And then you just dump everything out. You and your friends, your parents, we're just all going through and make sure, ew, I don't like this candy. You're trading it off. And man, you talking about tummy aches. And
Gluten-free treats.
the rest of the year, I was like, I'm so sad today that these kids will never understand what it meant, how important trick-or-treating was. It wasn't just go out and get and have fun. It was it was a whole year thing. Oh my God, what are you gonna wear? The candy, what parties? I mean, people decorate their houses, makeshift haunted houses, and
Oh, they'll never. I wish I had pictures. I wonder if my mom still has pictures, just to give them an example. Because I'm thinking there weren't. Where did you grow up? If you don't mind me asking, where did you grow up?
Long Beach, California.
Where?
Long Beach.
Long Beach. That's right. You told me Long Beach. I grew up in Pomona. It was pretty fire too. In the middle of a gangland. It was epic. Woo, Halloween again, and they think people. Yeah, it is bad this year, but damn, you guys still have no idea what it was like in the '80s.
Oh.
So, with your proton pack, your microphone, you've been found throughout the halls of Monsterpalooza, Midsummer Scream, Scare LA, and you've interviewed some very notable horror icons. Yeah, we're talking about you, John Massari. You brought us together. But what in-person interview stands out to you the most? Like, did you have any weird, awkward celebrity moments? I want awkward.
Awkward. There was an awkward one, but it was my fault. Sort of. But let's say the one that really stand out was Lance Henriksen. He plays Bishop in Aliens, Aliens on down. Not the first one, second one,
Aliens.
Yeah, Aliens. He was also in Aliens 3, and he was in Aliens versus Predator, and he also Pumpkinhead. I mean, Millennium. He's Near Dark. He's when I interviewed him, there was something about him that really pushed me to. I mean, you always meet someone that puts you along, but his interview was particularly special. And when I talked to him, he had a line. He was starting to get a line of people, and I was like, okay, maybe I should cut it off. And he's a talker, and he was so into the interview that I said, maybe I should come back because you're starting to gather a line. He said, they can wait. I'm talking to you right now. And I was like, okay. So that was special. That was important. But one thing I learned is that he didn't learn how to read until he was in his 30s. And his career didn't really pick up that much until that time, once he learned how to read. And I was kind of like, wait, what? What?
Right?
That lets me know you don't know what people go through in their lives, what they had to accomplish. He walk at a con now. It's like, oh my God, Lance Henriksen, and people want his autograph and signing their stuff. But this guy probably didn't even know how to write his own name.
Damn.
That's true, but he didn't know how to read until his 30s. He had to teach himself. He had to learn how, but I don't think it's like, this word, I think it was comprehension. Sometimes comprehension, people learn it differently. So I'm going to say that because it's just different than, reading a word and understanding.
Right.
So, yeah, and it's amazing what you learn about someone just asking them a question. These celebrities, these stars out there, they're glamorous and things like that, but some of them have checkered past, some of them have horrible past, some try to run from it. Me,
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm a celebrity or anything. I would never run from it. I mean, I want to help somebody. I don't want to cover up what I went through because I want people to see that stuff happens and I made it. That's why I always say the journey is always better than the destination.
Mm.
It's important that people know that you went through horrible times because they're going through horrible times in their own way and they need to know there's a light. And that's important. So when I talked to him, I was like, that was special. That was special for him to even tell me that. That was special.
Right.
An awkward moment. I want to say the most awkward moment. I did interview. I'm not going to say that one
Oh boy.
because they're just who they are, and I just don't want to.
Oh, don't feel bad. I told Bruce Campbell to shut the fuck up, but it's just my expression. So I was waiting for him to drop me. Like, you know how he'll nail people down. He'll talk shit, and he didn't do that with me. So I was really happy because I was like, oh, that's just how I say things when I'm excited.
For the most part, most of them was not awkward enough, except for that one. I would say embarrassing was recently when I did the Black horror panel. I think so. It's when I was trying to, Ernest Dickerson, the director, Ernest Dickerson, when I mentioned something he worked on and he never even did it. So like when he looked at me weird, like, what? I was like, because when you do so much research on that many people, things cross over and you write things. Yeah. So I felt embarrassed because it was live. For me, that was an awkward moment, but
you killed it though. You wrapped it. You were like, sorry, my fault. But he seemed okay. I don't feel like he looked at you weird.
He did give me a weird look, but it's okay. I was sweating so bad. I was like, oh, I made a mistake live.
I don't like doing live. I feel you. Okay, so you said that the Thing is your favorite horror film, so it's certainly no wonder why. I mean, movie stands against the test of time, man. Fucking John Carpenter. But why is it one of your favorites?
It is the first horror film I remember trying to sneak and watch it with both my parents. They were in the living room, and I was, supposed to be in the bed. And I kept trying to sneak out because I wanted to see what they were doing. I was a very nosy kid, very nosy. And finally, when they kept telling me to stop, go back to bed, they were like, okay, fine then. You sit and watch this movie. So I, sat between them. And the first scene I saw was when Nora's head,
of course,
from the body and crawled across the floor. That was the first scene I saw. And I was trying to cover up. They were like, no, you put your hands down. You watch it. You watch it. And I'm like, ah!
And annoyed.
And it became my favorite movie.
Oh, the movie's epic. It still scares me.
Yeah.
It's scary, but it's also so awesome. And I'll mention this later. I will still sit on Kurt Russell's face. That's with my next guest. We're going to talk about stuff like that. Let's see here. You have a fabulous Ghostbusters tattoo. I love it. It's so hot. Now, tell us about your love for Ghostbusters, because you cracked me up because I have another friend who we were talking about pansexuality on how we were attracted to a cartoon. And one of the first cartoon characters I was attracted to, where I was like, I want him to be my boyfriend, I wanted to write him letters, was Peter Venkman. Egon was it for you? So yeah, tell us about Ghostbusters and your love for Ghostbusters.
Oh, that I can't remember if I watched that in the theater or not, but I do remember watching a VHS tape. So I watched it constantly, and I fell in love with the movie because I thought it was funny. I didn't get the jokes when you're that little, so that movie came out in '84. When I saw the movie, it was probably in '84, '85 for sure. So I was 5. So there you go. Now you know my age. But anyway, so I used to watch it all the time, and my favorite was Egon. I thought he was pretty. I thought he was so sexy, even though I was a kid. I was like Egon, because he was the brains. He was the brains of the group. So I really do love it, but I watched it with my dad. My dad was, I would sit on the bed and he would lay on the side and I would watch it with him. We would just watch it all the time. As much as I can remember. And it became a part of me because what I liked years later, because obviously I couldn't understand then, what I really liked about the Ghostbusters once I was older is that each one of them are different. Every one of those characters are different, and no one treat anyone different. One was smart, one had a little bit of money, one, they were scientists, but then there was one, Winston, who, he was just looking for a steady paycheck.
Right?
He didn't have the brains like them, but he was welcomed, and then they never treated him different. They didn't treat any, the sarcasm and the jokes went across the board.
Right?
I loved about it. And I wanted to have friends like that, where, everyone is different, but we all love you. And so it kind of attached itself to me as I got older and I started going to cons, Kamikaze, when it was Kamikaze. That was my first con I went to. And that was years ago. And after I met my boyfriend, he took me there and he's like this nerd. I wasn't into these conventions until I met him. And then he loves to read and video games. And he was like, oh, let's go here. So I went there. And so being around people that are like that, I was like, oh my God, there's a world out there. I had no idea. No one cared what you looked like. No one talked about this. Your hair could be all kind of ways. People were wearing weird outfits. People were doing these cosplay. I didn't even know what cosplay was until they were like, cosplay? What is this? But when I stood there and saw so many people, different nationalities, different looks, welcomed, that's when I was like, this is where I belong in this world. So I met a group of Ghostbusters who, were dressed up. The Southland Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters I met. And ever since then, it just became a domino effect of meeting this and doing this and the outfits and the, jumpsuit, the proton packs and collecting. It just kept going because I was different, I was weird, and I was welcome. And that's what I really loved about Ghostbusters. Now, every fandom have their, elites. Or what fandom has their moments. I don't do that much with Ghostbusters now. My focus is just on the horror genre, anything related to the horror genre. But it's still a big part of me. And I have the tattoo, and I can't take it away. So it's here. It's here. It's here to stay.
It's never going away. So, now, we talked about an unfounded theory. I mean, again, because there's a lot of talk right now, and that's what we want. We need these conversations. But we were talking about Black folks' apprehension about horror in our youth. Even today, there's a little bit of apprehension. I told you from my experience how when anytime I was moved, brokenhearted, or just flat out terrified, out of my own mind over a movie or a show. And then one particular incident was The Walking Dead when Dale died. And I was so upset. It was like I felt like I lost someone. And I was told by because this was the only, group of Black folks that I was able to hang around at the time because of where I live. I just wish there were more of us. So my Black family, who I held to a high esteem at the time, told me it was because I was opening demon portals and letting the devil in. And then they would refuse to watch horror films because of that reason. They felt that it was, first of all, they didn't like being scared. Understandable, it's not for everyone. But when Get Out and Us came out, they were at the theater that weekend watching. What do you make of stories like that?
I would have to say is that Get Out and Us showed us a different side of horror. It wasn't a monster wearing a ski mask or, wearing, some ghostly thing crawling from under the bed. It was real life relatable. And I think that is why they're so popular and why people who not interested in horror films started watching them. Because sometimes horror has to be, can I relate to something? Can I relate to a character, a topic? It's not for everyone. People think blood and guts and demons and, Satan and everything as soon as they hear the word horror, but it's not exactly like that. And I think in your case, when I don't think it mattered if Jordan Peele did it or not. I mean, it could have been anybody. But what it mattered is the content. Can I relate to this? Can I understand this? I get it. I want to see it. Finally watched it. It was horrifying because it felt real. Mm-hmm. I think that's why Jordan Peele, for those two films, was able to capture such a wide audience who's never even seen a horror film. Or those who lived by them, they still understood it because it was a different level. And I think if you're Black and you're not into horror films, it really shine the light on what could really happen. What did happen? For Get Out, there was slave auctions, and if you watch Get Out, similar. So there was similarities that he took from different parts of life, especially for Black folks or people of color who, every nationally had some type of moment in their history wasn't right. Right. Relate to that. It doesn't have to be Black. I mean, there were some Latinos that were auctioned off. I mean, there was some Native Americans that were auctioned off. Everyone can relate to that.
Yeah, anyone. It's really interesting. And it's in my case, I really think it's a gift. I'm glad whatever it took to get them interested. I'm happy for them. And it sparks a conversation. Now I can actually talk to them about something. And it didn't open any demon portals, which, yay, win-win. Now, I really want your input on Blackness in horror. What are your hopes for, seeing more inclusion in the movie industry moving forward without us, being a token, the token? I'm hoping that the horror industry doesn't start, or the movie industry period doesn't start including Black folks and everything starts looking like Fast and the Furious, that checkbox Sky had talked about. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that horror films, or they, and I'm like what you said, I'm afraid that it is going to start doing that. Like, okay, we have this and this, but make sure you have a Black person, now wait,
right.
you know, and it doesn't matter where they put them as long as they're in there. And I hope not. I hope that whoever's auditioning, if they happen to be Black, they're right for the part, not because they're Black, give them the part. And then they, you know, it doesn't go well, and then, you know, and and then people, the audience are not stupid. If something's mismatched, it's not going to work. So I hope that. Now, I want to see not just horror films, more roles. I mean, more important roles, more lead roles, not just a, you know, second best. Because there's some Black actresses and actors that are just phenomenal, and they're not the main person. They actually overshadow the main person.
Right?
And I'm just like puzzled. You know, like why? Maybe, you know, I've heard that sometimes Black casts cannot carry a movie. I've heard that term. But then if you watch, you know, Black Panther or something like that, it isn't a horror film, but that movie was just, it was like, it carried itself. Like,
So, well, I get goosebumps still.
and I think if a movie is great and it's Black actors, great. We milestone. But I want the movie to be great, not because they're Black, it's because they are good actors. That's what we need to focus. And it's sad because we will always see color. Until we're transparent or clear, everybody, we will always see, oh, she's good for a Black person. Oh, that Black person in that film was good. It's always going to happen. And there's nothing you could do about that. There's nothing you could do about that. You can't change what's in someone's heart.
Mm-hmm.
If you did, we'd have heart transplants and brain transplants. You can't do that. How someone grew up, how someone feels, you will never be able to change the person who's made their choice or made up their mind. All you could do is your best and give the new generation some, like, we can all do it. We can all do it. I want to see more Black horror, but I want to see good quality horror films. If we're going to have a Jason, let it be a character of Jason. We have Tony Todd, who's, Candyman, phenomenal actor. I've met him in person. I've interviewed him, and he is one of the most educated. I mean, he's done, stage. I mean, you would never know because you see him in Final Destination. Oh, he's Candyman. You've seen him in this and that, but that guy is phenomenal. But there's so many actors out there, but we need them to be in the front. They could carry
Right.
things, but
Exactly.
who's going to invest into that? Now, I know this is one last thing I'm going to say, is that I'm watching this whole thing, Black Lives Matter, and people are attacking, white people and everything. But I have to say this, not all white people are bad. 90% of my friends and the people I associate are not Black. And they're the most awesome people, and they're getting looked at weird. So I say this, even though we need to have more Black in our lives and in our films, we still will need the white person to help make things better. So we can't attack the innocent white person who's never like that. We can only address certain issues like, hey, we matter, give us a chance and all that stuff, but we're still, this world is run by white people or non-Black. It's just what it is. Millionaires and billionaires, they're white. They're different nationalities other than white. We would still need them to say, hey, this is wrong, because they got the money, they got the platform, they got all that. Until we have everyone's cooperation, we will still struggle. We will still, and thank goodness for the Black producers and directors that are once they got a moment to shine, they're bringing other colors in there, and that's what we need to. We need all of us to help each other, not just when it's convenient.
Thank you. Damn. Woo! I need you to make a talk show. Netflix. Don't think that I'm not going to be sending this to Netflix. I'm just saying. And by the way, I'm with you. It's about inclusion.
Yeah.
Like, I want people to really, really get that word into their head and what it means. Inclusion. We don't want to eliminate white people. I love my white people. Clearly my kids are basically white. I love my husband. I love heavy metal music, which is a majority of white people. So anyways, we don't, it just, I think the important thing to learn too is we still want you guys around. We're not trying to take anything. And I think that's, a big misconception. So now, speaking of Candyman and Tony Todd, remind me to share with you my Tony Todd story one day. Are you stoked about Candyman, Annabelle, and Lovecraft Country? I mean,
I'm beyond stoked. When I heard that they were remaking Candyman or reboot or continue on, they gave you a little bit, so you didn't know what direction Candyman was going to go into. I was like, let's see. And then when you find out who's involved in the creation, you're like, whoa. Because the first thing I saw was Jordan Peele. And I'm guilty myself. I thought it was a Jordan Peele film because that's all you heard. Jordan Peele, Candyman. And I was like, well, but now when I read upon it, I was like, oh, he just co-wrote it. Wait a minute. And then I looked and I was like, Nia DaCosta? Who's this? And I looked her up. Her resume is this long. But what the quality of her work is this big. And I think that's what we need to focus on, because she doesn't have a long resume stretching out, but what she's done hit points, and it made, her stories of, their essence of what they are. So I was like, okay. And I read more about her. I was like, oh my God, this girl's amazing. And I feel that when, she's directing and co-writing, she's directing a Black woman directing Candyman. I'm excited. But what I'm seeing is that it is going to be amazing. And just the trailer, if you saw the trailer with the paper,
that's the one. That's the one.
I saw that. I was like, I don't need to see nothing else. Give her the offer. That is genius. She told the story using shadows. Oh. That is genius. That woman is going to blow us away. And like I said, it's not the quantity of her work, it's the quality. And when they gave her this, when it was like, hey, you're going to do, Candyman, and she was writing it up, and then have Jordan Peele, and we know his style of telling a story. That means her style is either similar or to his liking. It may not be the same. You got to think about that. But that alone let you know that she means business. She loves what she's doing. Not love. She's in love of what she's doing. It's different. And she doesn't need fancy. It wasn't a fancy trailer. It was genius. Never seen anything like that. So I cannot wait for that Candyman.
Oh, I was gonna hate too until I saw the same thing. Looked into who was making the film, and that paper trailer. That's the only one I want to watch. It blew me away.
Can you imagine they did the whole movie like that? It just what it was showing was just amazing.
Oh, maybe they will. Maybe we'll get like an extra on the Blu-ray. You know what I mean? Like a short. Like a short version of it. And somebody write that down.
You paid attention to that trailer. They were telling the story of the Candyman before.
Right.
So that gives you an idea where this Candyman may begin, where the other one end. But we don't know. We don't know nothing.
Which I appreciate, don't you?
Yeah,
it just drives it more. I don't need to be told.
I don't tell you nothing, and that gets me to the other two. I can never say the name right. The one.
Ambellum?
Yeah, I can never say it right. I feel like I'm Ambellum.
There, it's perfect. Good.
When I saw that, I was like, it don't tell you nothing. The trailer doesn't tell you anything. You can read the little premise, but there's nothing. And that's how they used to be. Back then,
Right?
you know nothing.
Remember when the whole movie wasn't blown? You got all the good parts in the trailer. Like, when did that shit start happening? In the 2000s? Thanks for ruining it.
There was a trailer 4 minutes long one time. I said, I didn't watch the movie.
Right?
And I didn't go see it. I think I waited to Netflix. I forgot what film it was, but I waited to and it was like, my theory was right. I knew exactly who the killer was and who the protagonist and antagonist, because they
Damn it.
play.
Damn it.
For that one, what's her name? Jeanne, what's her name? How do you say it? Janelle
Monáe. Yeah, Janelle Monáe.
Janelle. Oh, I'm terrible with the names. And look at my name, right? And I'm terrible.
I know. I was like, figured you would be an expert.
Her music, her style. I think she's going to be she's going to be a great actress. I really do love her style.
Yeah, I love how she's like tiny and mighty. You know, it's what I love about her. She's tiny and so mighty.
I love her style when I first remember Tightrope. I was learning how to do that. And I was like doing my legs, my feet. I love how she had that Sammy Davis, that old, look to her. I loved it. And Lovecraft. I never heard of Lovecraft Country until people start talking about it. And I didn't know about the book or anything until I looked it up. I was like, oh, it's obvious, Lovecraft. Duh! But I read the story on that, and that sounds interesting. I
yeah.
can't wait to see that one.
When we talked about it, with Midsummer Scream, it was it's interesting because James asked me, have you read the book? I said, yeah. In 2016, I was making sure I was reading everything that I could. I thought, and here's me, I just assumed that the author was Black, because in the film you could see, or not in the film, I'm sorry, the book, I mean, it is written at this perspective. I need someone to get me in touch with Matt, because I need to know how he was able to capture, how he was able to capture the Black experience in the Jim Crow era, and this was at the end of it. But the whole point of the Lovecraft Country, it's an HBO series. It's not going to have anything to do with the book. HBO is really good at making sure that they put in original story along. They're really good at basing it on a book, not making it the book. So I'm really excited to see what twists and turns, because they usually pull it off quite well until they decide to do a last season and it all. Yeah, we're not going to go into. I'm talking about True Blood and Game of Thrones. I mean, that was the biggest letdown I've ever had in my life.
I only saw half of an episode of Game of Thrones, but never watched the entire series.
Oh, that's good stuff. You got to watch it. That's good stuff. Until the season 8.
That I've never. He always, you got to watch one, and I was like, no, I got other things to watch.
Trust me. If you don't trust your boyfriend, I was the same way. My dad actually introduced me to it. He's like, he brought me the DVD. He bought the DVD set, and he said, sit down and watch this. And I was an adult, and I'm like, fine. I'm glad he did, because, man, it's something that you need to see. So how did you feel when you were approached by Nostalgic Nebula and Midsummer Scream to do those bitchin' panels that you did? The Black horror, and then you got to interview David Skall. I watched that as it was happening, David Skall, and I was like, holy shit, this is happening. Like, I got so excited, especially for Black horror when that came out, and because you kept it so mum, and then you're like, here you guys go. How did you feel, when they approached you to do both of those?
Okay, so Cody Chavez is, I think, friends with John Massari, and he also saw that I was a guest on Dead Meat. So, and then he was like, maybe I should ask her, because he wanted to do something for the whole Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And get together, to talk about Black horror and things like that. So he didn't have anyone particular in mind that I'm aware of. And he saw me when I used to go to Monster Palooza, things like that, but he never got the courage to come up and talk to me. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. He didn't get the courage to talk to me. So finally, he messaged me, say, hey, I'm trying to put together a Black Horror panel. Do you have any ideas? Do you have a title? Like, he was asking me all these things. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Who do you got? And he already had talked to Raw Digga. He already established something with Raw Digga. And the other three, Ernest Dickinson, Keith David, and Toy Newkirk, Toy Newkirk, I think he asked her ahead of time, but it was Keith David where it was kind of like he wasn't sure if he was going to get it because that was on my list. I said, oh, try for Keith David. And he was like, whoa, that's big. Try. You can't. All the worst is no. So he established the three, Ernest, Toy, and Raw. And he told me, he was like, hey, this is it. I want you to be part of this. Let's do this. I know you'll be good because I've watched you for a while. And John said, you're awesome. So he's like, okay. And I was like, okay, I'll do my best. And it was challenging because they were all from different films. And I was like, oh, I was reading I had 2 weeks, a lot of reading, a lot of understanding, even though I knew who they were. You think until you read about them. And when he got Keith David, I remember he emailed me and said, we have Keith David. And my niece was here. And we were standing in the room and I have my dad's picture on the wall and my niece who and my dad used to take, and do things, like I said earlier, go out and stuff. So it was like a triangle because his picture was here and I was here and I was standing in front of her and I read it and I burst into tears because, Keith Davis from The Thing. And then my niece, who's very close connected about my dad, and then my dad's picture was right here. And I was just like, I just went to the floor. I was on my knees crying in front of her, and she was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Was like, it was just, I still can't believe it. It was a moment in my life where I never thought would actually happen. And I met him 2 years earlier at the Thing anniversary when there was 5 of the cast members. That was the most expensive day of my life. 5 took pictures, and each one I just cried. You guys have no idea what the movie means. It's not that you guys acted and and had fun. It's what it represents and what the memory it keeps in my head. So that was amazing. That was an amazing experience, and I still can't believe it. And before we went live, how you set it up here. It was through Zoom and whatnot. So we were all sitting there, and Cody was on there, and I was live, and then you could see everyone's name before they popped on. And I was sitting in front of it, and I was like, Keith David, Toy, Ernest, and Ra. And I was like, oh my God, they're going to pop up each one. And Cody was just sitting there checking everything. And sure enough, the first person that popped up was Keith David. I was like, ah! He was like, hey, what's going on? I was like, oh my goodness. Keith David. So, talk for 30 minutes to loosen up and ask questions. Is it okay? Stuff like that. And when we went live, I knew this was a game changer.
Yeah.
So
tremendous. You attracted some followers. You attracted Midsummer Scream. I know I had started sharing that with the prominent folks in the horror community that I know. So I'm like, you better watch this because you pulled it off so well. You had that reaction, but man, I don't know how you do. I fangirl really hard. Again, I'll tell you about my Tony Todd story another time because we're running a little bit low on time. So actually, I'm going to skip a couple of these. Those will be for you and I. What does the Oprah of Horror have coming up for the unique 2020 spooky season?
Well, what do I have coming up? I'm getting together another show that has something to do with, it's like Mythbusters meets horror. So, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Bye. No,
She's like, no more.
it's Mythbusters meets horror, and I find that interesting because there's so many cliches and things like, why do people do this? Why do they do that? Why they don't do that? So we're going to take those and recreate them.
Oh, that's
Figure out why something doesn't work in the horror film or why it does work. So that's it.
I'm excited. I'll be watching. You know, I'm always looking at you. So, Ivotres, thank you so much for spending your time and just, getting deep with me and getting to know each other a little bit better, getting to know you. I just wanted to make sure you are highlighted because, again, when I do this, whatever this is, it's because I want to share what I love about people. And you were just, oh, what are you doing with your finger?
Oh, I wanted to say one thing.
Oh, I'm a what?
No, I wanted to say one thing that people rarely ask me why I choose the Oprah of horror.
Did I not put that on there? I feel like you kind of answered that, but go ahead. Please.
No.
Actually, let's make it professional. So, why the moniker, the Oprah of horror?
Why I chose that particular title for myself. It's just a title. It's just a hashtag, so it's not part of anything. The reason, because I grew up watching Oprah, and and what I liked about her is that she was able to talk to anyone and made them feel welcome on her show. She's had, white supremacists on her show. She's had druggies. I mean, crazy people. She's been to places where it was crazy and weird and dangerous. And she had all murderers and everything on her show, but she always made them feel comfortable to tell their story, regardless of their background. She had that ability of getting information and understanding why this person is like that. And I wanted more than just telling someone about a horror film. I wanted more of like why it's important. Horror is important. So that's why I kind of chose the Oprah of horror. Because I could talk to people. So that's why.
Oh, I love, see, and it's perfect. And the way you answer these questions and the way you put them out there, it's just, if you could tell, because I was curious, I'm like, how do you do Oprah and how do you do horror? Huh.
Believe me,
I could have sworn I had that on there, like looking at things, I'm like, did I have that? But it was beautiful. That's perfect. It's perfect. So the Oprah of horror, everyone on my show, I'm like, what? Ivotres, where can we find you?
Oh my goodness. Twitter, it's H Movies Beyond. You can find me on YouTube, starting to put more content on there now. You can just type horror movies and beyond and everything me will come up. Believe it or not. Google it.
I've tried it. It's pretty dope. I've tried it. I can attest to it.
That's it. Just horror movies and beyond, and you will find everything about me. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I pop up.
YouTube. Are you going to do a TikTok?
I do have a TikTok, but I haven't done anything new because I'm so busy with everything else. But I hope to do some TikTok stuff. Maybe.
I know someone's telling me to get into it. I'm like, maybe when things get a bit safer, hopefully soon, before the end of the year, you and I could get in on one.
Yeah.
I have ideas for us. Sometimes they don't make any sense. And I'm like, well, why was I thinking that? But that's because I'm a stoner. So
ask me, does this make sense? And I'm like, girl, yes or no. You never know.
Exactly. Thank you again, sweetheart. I'm so glad that you agreed to come on my ridiculous little show. You guys, you know where to find her. My dog is even so excited to hear from you today, Ivotres. And we'll see you guys soon. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Shut the fuck up.